Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday night as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to That Silverline Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, joined as always by Jose Fuentes.
Hello.
Cassisi Harris.
Hey, how you doing?
David Rios.
Hi there, how you doing?
And a special guest, Randy Reynaldo.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. If you are watching or listening at home, you can check us out live on YouTube, Twitch, anything like that, Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Pacific time on Tuesdays. I already said Tuesdays. Or listen to us on your podcast service of choice anytime after that. Make sure to, rate us, leave us a comment, like us, share it with your friends, all that fun stuff. All right, housekeeping aside, we're here today to talk with Randy Reynaldo, creator of Rob Haynes Adventures, winner of the 2018 Inkpot Award, and in general, a swell dude for what I am led to believe. So, Randy, why don't you introduce yourself and give a little bit of background where people might know you from?
Yeah. Again, my name is Randy Reynaldo. My company is WCG Comics. I've been self-publishing. I started it as a zine in the 90s. And because of the feedback I got, I started sending it. I started, distributing it. I started as a full-size comic book. And then, it went a few issues. And then in 2000, I rebooted it as Rob Haynes Adventures. Before that, it was called Adventure Strip Digest. And also, I should add, I got a Xeric Grant Award. I don't know if you guys remember that or if people remember that, but that was by, it was by one of the guys who did Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They started a foundation for self-publishers. And I was one of the earliest recipients of that. And that allowed me to collect all my zine comics into a trade paperback, which was nice because when I went to Full Size Comics, I didn't want to put the zine stuff in the comic books because my work had developed enough that I wanted to show my new stuff in my comic book series. So I was able to put those earlier back issues in a trade paperback, which the main reason to do it is so people can see the style. But even though all my stories are self-contained, there is a story arc, so you get to see kind of the origin of the characters and a lot of recurring characters who come back later in the series. The one thing I should note is that what primarily inspired my comic book, when I pitch it, I often say it's kind of like a young Indiana Jones. People have called it like a Johnny Quest, an action adventure series. But my main inspiration, even though I grew up in the 70s and then I was in college in the 80s, I loved, like a lot of people, I loved Batman. That was one of my favorite comics growing up. Sergeant Rock was one of my favorite comics. But for some reason, when I was a kid, I discovered old comic strips in the history of comics. So that's when I discovered comics like Terry and the Pirates and Wash Tubbs and Captain Easy. And for some reason, those comics, I don't know, I really latched on to them, and especially the art style. If you know Milton Caniff, Alex Toth came out of that school. And when it came to doing my own comics, I really wanted to work in that tradition, that kind of tradition. And then a little later, I discovered The Spirit. And again, it's kind of that noir, black and white, graphic style. I really like that kind of work. So that's really where I'm coming from with my comic book series. It's, he's just in terms of background, he's a private investigator for a company called Justice International. He travels the world on assignment. He's also the newest guy at the agency. Now, I've been doing this a long time, so I realized this character has not really aged. I always joke that when I started it, he was older than me. Now I'm way older than he is right now. But part of the idea of the series was that he was kind of the new kid on the block, and all the other agents at the agency are these old school, like ex-military mercenary, and he's not really that kind. He's not as jingoistic as them.
Yeah.
So that's part of the fun. So he was a young guy, but at the end of the day, what I really wanted to do was, even though a globe-trotting action adventure series with stories ripped from the headlines, and also stories ripped from the headlines taking place in a different locale every issue, I actually sometimes call it an action variety series. And a good model for that, to go back to Realizing the Spirit, he would do comedies, satires, straight noirs, and I've tried to mix it up a little like that in my own comics. And you guys have seen that I did a sports issue that I'm really happy with, and so a lot of the stories are a little bit more, they're a little bit more comedy oriented, or humor. They have humor in them, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot more lighthearted than a lot of comics today. I think there's a lot of great stuff. One reason I think I got a lot of traction early in my career when I was starting out was I don't think there was a lot of people working in that tradition at the time.
Yeah.
I'd have pros come to me and say, "Oh, if I could do anything I wanted, I'd be doing a book like this." Now since then, there's a lot of great work out there, and I don't want to compare myself to them, but Darwin Cook kind of came in out of that tradition. The Batman Adventures a little bit, the art in there that kind of comes a little from, not exactly that same tradition, but there's a lot of people doing work in this. But when I started, there wasn't a lot, and I think I'm still one of the few people who really tries to work in that globe-trotting soldier of fortune kind of thing, but also, like I said, like the spirit as well.
Yeah, that was something that Jose and I had noted earlier when we were talking about it, is it from the issues we read, it feels very much on that same lines as like an 80s like pop serial. And like if you're a fan of things like Knight Rider or the A-Team, it's right up that alley.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, when I said rip from the headlines, I think to go back to those early strips I liked, I think one reason I liked them so much was, when I was a kid, I was really into World War II, so that's partly why I liked Sergeant Rock. But those old adventure strips, what I liked about them, especially when World War II started, is that their characters were in the war. So they were taking place in current events, and that's what I tried to do with my book. I mean, I'm a bit of a news junkie, so I get a lot of story ideas.
Definitely.
They're not the point of the story, but at least it creates an interesting environment or locale or story idea.
Absolutely. For the current reader, it keeps it topical, but also for readers down the line, then there's like a concrete grounding point for them as well.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's a double-edged sword, because I, as I've told you, I started this a long time and my character is ageless. But in my earliest story, there was still the Cold War. I mean, there was still the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
So I have stories. So
Sure.
I'm not a super stickler for I mean, you have to have some continuity, but I'm not going to say, oh, that's not canon, and it is what it is. So.
Yeah. I mean, if Ash can be like 18 in Pokemon for so many years, I feel like it's fine. Yeah. So there are series there where characters do kind of age along, maybe not necessarily at like a realistic rate, but they either age up or physically mature as well as emotionally mature, things like that. Was it just wanting to give it the same timeless vibe that you decided to not necessarily do it Raw Pains, or is it was there even a conscious choice to that, or was it just something that's kind of you naturally noticed happened where you just kept them the same age?
Well, I've been thinking about this recently, because I don't think he's not absolutely new. I mean, the way I write him now, because I've done so many stories, and frankly, I haven't really done a whole lot of stories where he's at the agency. He's usually just on adventures. But I was recently thinking that, I even had a thought about maybe introducing a character who's the new young gun, so kind of threatens Rob. So it does show that, that would obviously show that he's a little more experienced. The other piece of that I would say is that, I was working on a story that I kind of wanted to show the beginning of his career, and all I'm going to say is it's an older story. It's an earlier time. And one way I do that is because I have changed his hairstyle a little, so I could kind of use that as a marker, or excuse, to show when it takes place.
Absolutely.
Lower the pop, right? He's got the flop hair.
Yeah. I didn't share my really early stuff. The stuff I said was in the zines. He had kind of a mullet in his earliest.
Okay.
Yeah, in one of my books, I think I did it was a one-page filler, and it was a joke thing, but it was called Crisis of Infinite Robs or something like that. And I did have a shot of all what he looked like over the years, from the mullet to the floppy hair, and now he's got kind of the spiky hair.
I wonder, as a creator, back in the day, you mentioned you got a lot of traction, you won several awards. What stopped the temptation from changing your style to fit into sort of like the big kind of publishing houses, as opposed to just saying, I'm going to stick with my creation and kind of make that?
Probably my own limitations. No, seriously, obviously I didn't make a career in comics, and I mean, part of it was because I wanted to do what I wanted to do, but the other piece of it was because I knew I really didn't have the chops or the discipline to make a career out of it or to be a freelancer. So I just kind of found my own way, just kind of doing my own book, and I had enough story ideas. And, I found my little niche. I mean, I'm not, I don't have the hugest audience. And the other problem was, or the other drawback is, I haven't been, when I was starting out, I knew you had to have, like say Jeff Smith. I mean, when I started in the small press area at San Diego Comic-Con, I wouldn't have remembered this if I didn't have notes from the time. But Jeff Smith was was in that area next to me, and within a year or two, he graduated, and I did talk to him a little, back in the day. So I was kind of in that class with him, but he was, he could come out with a monthly book, and I really didn't, because I did have a day job, I did have a career on the side. So, and the people at Diamond at the time, they really liked my work. And so they just said, just send it in when it's ready. But, realistically, when you're coming out, and I'll be frank, I mean, I've been coming out like once a year, that's not gonna, that's a hard sell. I mean, you have to build momentum, and, people want to expect it, not in a year, but they want you to hit at least every other month at minimum. On the other hand, Diamond used to tell me, they'd say, and they were always encouraging me, but they also said, knowing what my schedule was like, they said, trade pair. They said, when you come out with a trade, hit us up with that, But the market's changed so much, so, but that's really why I stuck with it. I mean, like I said, even though I've come out with I've been averaging about an issue a year, but now I've got 25 issues out. You know what I mean? So now I've got quite a, so it adds up over time. But yeah, in the moment you're like, oh man, I wish I could be more productive. But at least I have a body of work.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I think also, as you mentioned in the pre-show, this is kind of more an educational show. So we have a lot of listeners or viewers that are currently going through art school or writing school and are particularly looking at comics. And that's something we talked about before, is when you first get in and have a day job. But a lot of us here are actually in a very similar boat in terms of our comics careers, in that we have a comics career, but it's not cranking out a book each month with a major publishing house. It's creating a book that is wholly ours and getting it out when it's ready. So before we move on to our next thing, could you talk a little bit about some of the fulfillment you find with that sort of creation schedule? Like
some of the what? I'm sorry.
Some of the fulfillment you find with that kind of creation schedule.
Right. Well, in terms of fulfillment, I mean, it's just, doing the stories, I mean, I do get satisfaction out in completing the work, and I will say also, I mean, I do like the self-contained stories, but one reason I say I do that is because I don't want to be working on something that's, I mean, it takes me a year to do an issue. So I certainly don't want people to have to wait for a year for the next part of the story.
Right.
So just being able to complete the issue and having so many issues behind me, that's plenty satisfying, and the other piece is that I often said that if I didn't feel I was improving, that would have been really discouraging. I don't know if I would have kept that up. And certainly, again, I didn't send you my earliest trade paperback, but you could really see by the end of that trade paperback, because those were the zine issues where you could see my work really get better or evolve, because it was really cartoony at the beginning. And as a matter of fact, sometimes I look at my, some of the stuff, I sent you, I did send you some of my favorite stuff, or stuff that I really am proud of. But sometimes I look at that stuff and I go, wow, I don't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's just because it's distance of time and I'm too close to what I'm working on. But sometimes I look at that stuff and said, I wish I was, I don't know, I'm not as good as that was. But, you just do your best, and,
Definitely. Well, as you do create things, your talent and your taste both improve at the same time. So I imagine after so many years looking back at like your first issue, it's a wild ride.
Yeah. And I'm sure you guys have heard this, or it's been said here, but there's the old thing, and I tell this to people when I, who are starting out, who was it? Who did Dave Sim, and I think other people said, get your first 1,000 pages out of the way. Those would be your first page, your worst pages.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it took me 1,000 to get to where I wanted, but that's good advice. I mean, that when I said about not being, that if I didn't get better, I'd be discouraged. Yeah, just just keep working through it, and just know if you keep doing it, hopefully you'll get better. I don't know if that's 100% true for everyone, but it does help.
Definitely.
Well, I would say, from like an education point of view, that is something.
Oh,
Well,
Were you guys able to hear me?
yep, until you muted yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a genius. But anyway, that's one of the things that is said at art school was that yeah, the 1,000 pages, but like the only way to improve is by continually doing the work. You know what I mean? You can do like a page or two here or there, but like if you want to get better as an artist, you keep drawing, you keep working on what you want to learn to do, what you want to improve in regards to your skill. And so like you saying going from like your beginning stuff to like the stuff where you got to the point where you're like, hey, I like that, I like where I'm at. You know what I mean? Like I mean that's just like you said, I was just, I guess, emphasizing or agreeing with what you said about the 1,000 pages. Like that's, I mean, that's a sound advice that, you know what I mean, that is taught in the art school. I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. When I went to college, I wasn't really, I wasn't drawing comics. I didn't start drawing comics, or I didn't get serious about it until I finished college. But when I was in college, I did have a sketchbook. And so I always kept sketchbooks. So that at least kept me, it didn't teach me the art of inking and all that. These sketchbooks were really, it was mostly, markers and maybe a little penciling, but it was almost straight markers. But I was, working on stuff and working things out. And but it wasn't until after college that I really sat down and started trying to work with, professional tools for print. I didn't really do that until college. I think before college, I did a little in high school. Just from how-to books, the brush and all that. But I was just doing that all on my own. And I still have that earlier stuff that I kept. But I've started photographing them to maybe post, but there's another piece of me that says I'm not going to post this. I mean, you can always say, everyone has to start somewhere. That is true, but yeah, the bad thing though is, or not bad, but right now, everything I do, I really try to put it in print. So I don't spend a lot of time doing sketchbook stuff. Just for just to kind of warm up or anything like that. And I probably should. And I've thought about that for a long time. But at the same time, in terms of my productivity, I try to put it all, everything I do, I want it for the book, on paper.
Absolutely. So you mentioned the argument of going back and forth on whether or not you want to post something. But I went through and did some stalking on your social medias, and I have to say that for an independent creator, you're probably one of the most prolific users of social media, at least Facebook, that I've seen in the comic space.
Oh, really?
Most of our comrades are digital hermits.
It's nice of you to say that, because I think I don't post enough, and I'm the type of person who says, "Oh, no one cares what I put out there." I'm really tough. I'm really hard on myself. I don't like putting myself out there, actually. But I have to admit, I often tell people, I said, "Oh yeah, if I didn't have my comic book, I wouldn't be on on social media." But that said, I on Facebook, I am friends with a lot of professionals, both people I know personally or have met or just know of, and it has created it's a nice community, actually. People talk about how toxic it can be, but and this is true across the board with Twitter and stuff. If you stay in your lane, and ignore the noise or the toxic stuff, it's nice. And Facebook I do like quite a bit, because there's more of a conversation and you could write more and stuff. And I even though I joked about how I don't like to put myself out there, I tend to write a lot of stuff. I'm a big explainer. So but that's nice to hear that.
Yeah. So you found that you kind of the benefit for you there's creating that network of other creators. That do you find that helps with marketing your comic, or is that primarily with helping staying inspired, helping staying motivated?
Yeah, I think I mean, there's still nothing like going to a comic book convention and then interacting with people and coming home. I don't get quite that same, high,
Yeah.
or that. But at the same time, it's better than going to the comic book convention and then not talking to anyone until you go back the next year or another show. So on Facebook, it is. At least I'm continuing talking to people that I know, or people who read my books, or they see me. So and they know what's up, they, I have a newsletter too, but Facebook's a nice way to just say, what I'm up to, or what page I'm up to, or what the next issue is. So I guess it does help with marketing a little. And I will say this, and I'm sure this, when it comes to advertising, they often say, one ad's not going to do anything, or one push, it's over time.
Yeah.
And I will say that just recently, I realized, every once in a while I'll just I'll post something to say, hey, my books are available here. And last time I did it, I got orders,
Nice.
and yeah, so that was nice, both from people who've ordered my books before, kind of saying, oh yeah, I have to catch up. So it does. So I guess it does work. I'm not someone who's big on SEO. I mean, I don't, the only thing I pay attention to is, I got a sale. That's it. But I'm not looking at how much hits I got or anything like that. Frankly, I don't think I get a lot. But as a matter of fact, this is a little self-deprecating, but my wife, she posted something in response to something about some cat, and she got way more likes than I ever got. I got this many likes. I said, man, I haven't gotten even close to that many likes on anything I've ever posted. So I guess the lesson is just post more about cats. So.
Yes, that's
right.
That's what I'm finding. A lot of pet based marketing. So what we need to do as creators. Yeah. So somebody mentioned in the intro here is you won the 2018 Inkbot Award.
Yes.
Presented at San Diego Comic-Con. Can you talk a little bit about how you won that award, what it meant for your career, and kind of what it meant for you personally?
Well, it came out of nowhere to me. And what I say is, it's an award for my stubbornness. That's what I said it is. What happened is, I've been exhibiting at San Diego Comic-Con. That's always been the main show I've done, and I've tried to. I'm starting to explore doing other shows, but I've done San Diego Comic-Con since. I was there at the first time they did the small press, and I've pretty much been there ever since. I think I've missed 1 or 2 years, including the year I was married. But
fair excuse.
Yeah. And then but I've done the show every year. So, but I'm not, I don't think I'm not a huge name or anything like that. But in 2018, they contacted me and said they wanted me as a special guest. And I said, and they put me up and everything. And I said, oh, that's nice. And then they had a spotlight panel. And this is where I get to plug Kablam, who you have. Nice. I know you guys push them. I'm really good friends with Barry Gregory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
who runs Kablam. So anyway, and the reason I bring him up is because at the show they said, "Oh, you get a spotlight panel." And I've done a few panels, not recently, but I have done panels over the years. But I said, "Oh, what am I going to do?" And I don't want to be up there presenting by myself or just talking about myself. So Barry is actually a genuine, in addition to being a friend, and we met as self-publishers, in the 90s. Matter of fact, we did a book signing together, him and with his wife, Jenny, to Canada, the two of us. That's how we became really close. Someone flew us out there for a signing, and that's how we became good friends. But anyway, I asked Barry to basically be my wingman. He was the moderator of the panel. Nice. So that was nice. So anyway, so we had the panel, and the other thing I did is I said, who's going to show up for this? So one thing and I had a good turnout. It was nice. But part of the reason I think is that I did say, I think I subtitled Adventures in Self-Publishing. So I figured people interested in self-publishing, and I did obviously talk about that, might find that of interest. So I think that did also help fill the room a little. But anyway, so I was there, and before the show started, someone introduced me from Comic-Con. They introduced me, and then they presented me with the Inkpot Award, which was a total shock. I knew nothing about it. I will say, after the fact, I found a website by someone who was putting odds on who was going to get an Inkpot Award that year, and I was on it, and he thought I would.
Oh, wow.
And I have to say, I'm glad I didn't see it beforehand, because if that was in my head, I would have been, nervous or had that expectation and been disappointed if it didn't happen. So I'm so glad I didn't know about it. So, so I think what it was, I think partly it's because I've been kind of a fixture at Comic-Con, but I also know, especially when I was starting out there, a lot of the people there like my work, because I'm one of the old school comic book guys, working in comics and working in that style. And I think that was part of the reason, was that, again, I'm just doing an old school comic book, and I've been doing it continuously, and so it was a big honor. They give several, I think they give like 15 to 20 a year. So, I got I was joking. I said, I got mine before Kevin Smith, because Kevin Smith got it the night after I did.
Nice.
but it was a big honor, and and I will say it did come with some real perks. One of them is I don't have to worry about signing up a badge for me or my wife. I don't have to go through the lottery. I just can walk in. I don't even have to get in advance. I can just walk in and I get a badge.
That's nice.
So
That's cool.
That's one nice perk about it.
Absolutely. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So anyway, it's for, they give Inkpot Awards. They've given it like to Kevin Smith for a whole variety of people in popular culture in general. But mine was for said achievement in comic arts. So it was it was a real honor, and obviously that just put me on another high. So so it's a nice recognition, just of my body of work. That I've having worked on that for so long.
Absolutely, yeah. It's kind of a commitment to trucking, and they're not only in creating a comic, but also being willing to take it to market every year.
Yeah,
absolutely. What are some of the so we mentioned that the benefits of attending a convention for you? Not only is it's talking to the creators, getting inspired, getting motivated that way, and also being such a fixture that you actually get recognized for it. But as an independent creator, have you noticed that going to convention is, for some people it's better than online for their sales. Other people not so much. People just like the community aspect of it. What are some of your main benefits that you found going to conventions year after year?
At the end of the day, it is making connections, because I can be online, but it's hard to push things online, for people to see your book, to talk to you or get to know you. And, one thing I've learned, or at least I've found out, is that, if people like you, they might be more apt to try out your book. That's really what it comes down to, is just making that personal connection. And obviously that's a lot easier at a show when you can be a one-on-one with someone versus, you're online. And it's nice you said I'm very visible online, but you're still one of all these people on a feed, and I told you, I swear to you, I am very, very introverted and shy. But the one thing I've learned is that and everyone's different. I remember I was next to a guy, and he was a really nice guy, but I called him the Machine, because he stopped everyone, and it didn't, and he really, he didn't come on. He was very, I don't want to say aggressive in a bad way, but he was good. At the end of the day, he made sales. It helps to have a book that helped, but I'm not quite like that. But I did learn that if you just stand there and watch people go by and maybe smile, that's not going to do it. Mm-hmm. You do have to, what I sometimes say is you have to, people, especially at San Diego Comic-Con, there's so much sensory overload. You have to do something to cut through that a little, and just saying, hey, I have to say, hey, how are you doing? I mean, it's as simple as that. Just kind of snapping them out of it and having them come over to your table. And sometimes I just say, have you seen my work? Why don't you take a look? It's a little bit more natural than that, but that's basically what it is. And it's 100. I'm not going to make a sale 100% of the time, but that increases my chances of making a sale, and if nothing else, you have a nice conversation with someone. There's nothing wrong with that either. I'm not, again, I've been at shows. I hate to say this, but I was at a show once where this guy, someone really literally had a breakdown because their sales weren't what they wanted to be. And they were a machine. They were really trying hard. So, and as a matter of fact, I should add that one of my advice to some people, because they've never done a show and they ask, I always say, don't go in expecting to make money. If you do make money, that's gravy and that's great. But go in kind of just trying to make connections and make some sales to offset it. Because if you don't make the sales and that's what you were counting on, you're going to be disappointed. You should really go in just if you make some sales, don't worry so much about, I understand some people, need the money too. I mean, you do have to pay attention to that, but still, don't base everything on the amount of sales you make, just kind of in terms of in terms of networking, making some connections, making some sales. And, some people, I've had people come back the same time as the show, later in the show saying, I read the issue last night. I really liked it. And then they get more or get it online or come back every year,
Absolutely.
So, so that's it. I mean, like I said, I think the most important part is just to reach out a little to people. You don't have to be a jerk about it or, you don't have to be overbearing, but at least people, try and get people to sign. Some people will say, I'm not interested, and that's fine too. But.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Last time I was at a con out in Florida, actually, I joked that my sales goal was just covering lunch each day. Everything after that was just whatever.
Right.
Oh. Okay.
So you do the story and the art. So are you, over time, have you become writer first, then you draw, or do you just start with?
No, it's funny especially the way you said that. That's what people, the first thing they sometimes do, or they're surprised by when they come to my table, or they go, "Did you, that I did the story and the art?" Or they'll say, "Did you do the story and the art?" I actually my joke response to that sometimes is, yeah, and when I was doing a zine, I said I also used to print and staple it too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do a full script for myself. I write, it looks like a movie script, basically, because I can do the pictures, and I will say just from a, process and artist point of view, I do think writing first, sometimes I do think I'm sometimes a little wordy, and I do think sometimes I haven't done a whole story where you kind of do just the, each the panels first. But I have found occasionally when you do it that way, when I've done like sequences like that, the storytelling comes through a little quicker or stronger. And then, adding the dialogue after, it's almost Marvel style, I guess, but I don't know. That's just not my process. Sometimes I do it. I've done that when I've been kind of stuck, just to kind of change things up, that I'll just work on a page and I'll pencil it. And sometimes I'll go, oh, this is really moving, versus if I write a script, sometimes I have to be a little conscious of, remember, this is, there's got to be action in here, not just talking heads, all that. I mean, you guys read my stories. I even though, like I said, I think I'm sometimes a little dialogue heavy, at the same time, especially since I do the stories that are self-contained, I think the movies kind of move a bit, I mean, sometimes it's at the detriment maybe of a little bit of detriment of a little bit of the of characterizations and stuff, or character development, but like I said, my stories, I think, are still pretty tight, even with all that.
I mean, from what I read, I get definitely seemed like there was a lot of a care in maintaining the flow from panel to panel.
No,
so
thanks.
even if it was done Marvel style, there is definitely the voice and the flow of story is very consistent.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, one thing I'll add. I don't know if we'll get to this, but and I think I sent you the proof of the story I'm working on right now. Yeah, and that story is where Rob goes back in time, and it's kind of explained.
Yeah,
and it's a 19. I talked about how my first inspiration were the Soldier of Fortune strip. So in the 25th issue, which was perfect for this 25th milestone issue, he goes back in time and teams up with all the adventure strip characters that I love, but of course I didn't name them the same, but they
legally distinct.
Like them. Yeah, but the other thing I decided to do was that each page is like a Sunday page.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so where the logos on each page, and then there's a little recap at the beginning, and then the thing, and I kind of stuck with it. I don't know if it works perfectly, but I will say that and this goes back to when we were talking about being a little wordy, trying to put a whole sequence into a single page, it's been a challenge, I have to say, because and as a matter of fact, it kind of, even though my stories are pretty tight, it does still require a certain beat, when you have a Sunday page. And it's a little true in a comic book where you have, you want to have something that happens on a page that kind of pushes you to the next page, but doing it as a Sunday strip, I was, it's even more so, and getting, you want to have a little cliffhanger or a punchline in the last panel, and then have a little recap in the first panel. And then plus putting the logo in the first panel kind of eats up a little real estate for you from telling the story, but it's been fun to do. But I will say that, it required more of a grid panel as opposed to being able to open up the story a little, in terms of, big splash page. I don't do a lot of splash page type of pages, but still, I do vary the panel sizes a bit, and that. But I didn't do that so much in this story. I mean, what made it easier is that I didn't have to worry too much about layout because I was just doing the grid panel. But on the other hand, it kind of I'm worried about the the graphic interest of it. I mean, I think it's still, it's like always happens to me. I'm working in the middle of a story and I go, wow, this is really crappy. You get really, and what I've started doing is, I could just, when I finish a new page, I just create a PDF of all the pages I've done, and then I could kind of go through it. And I have to say, I've gone back and said, oh, okay, this isn't so bad. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure you guys know that when you're in the middle of the forest sometimes, and so, and it's a slog, you go, oh my God, this is not working, so you have to pull yourself out sometimes and look at the whole, look at the whole work to see if it's working or not, and then relate to that. I'm sure everyone does this, I'm saying, oh, I better fix that, or, little things like that.
Definitely. I mean, as someone who is just a writer, I don't do film illustration. The agony gets extended when you're like, I hope the script is good, and you're waiting for get proofs back from the illustrator. Stuck in limbo. Yeah. So you said something caught my interest earlier. I've spent a lot of time talking about your writing, but you also do your own illustration and inking. That sounds like, is that what you went to school for, or did you have to teach yourself that skill set?
No, my day job and my college major had nothing to do with art. I mean, it helped me. The art helped me a little in my job, but I was an English major, so I guess that's a bit on the right. I mean, I was in a creative writing side, so it didn't really help me so much. So I'm really self-taught. So a lot of it was, trial and error, and then looking at my favorite artists. That really what it came down to. I mean, and I still do that. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people do that, but especially the story I'm working on now. Like I said, it's a 1930s with all the old characters. So I am looking at those old Terry and the Pirates, Alex Toth. I'm looking at all those books for, just for atmosphere, for just the art style and everything.
Very cool. Yeah, how's that process of teaching yourself to ink? Because a lot of people teach themselves to draw over the lifetime, just a matter of studying shapes and then applying it. But inking is a whole other beast on top of that. How was that process for you?
Yeah, I like everyone else. When I started, I was using a brush, and I don't know if I was great at it, but I got proficient enough. Obviously, I mean, I was publishing my work, but as a lot of artists have told you, have said, the quality of brushes have gotten so bad, and so I started trying to move to brush pens.
Mhm.
And it took me a long time to find brush pens that I liked. And I finally have discovered they're mostly the Japanese ones. Is it Tombow?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's funny. I kind of go back and forth with the different ones. But the quality of some of those brushes are really, really good now. But I should add, I actually do have a one weird tick in my inking, in that I don't know, it's a weird confidence thing, but I actually go over, when I ink, I actually do all the line work first with kind of with a thin line pen, like a
Like a
.04.
multi-liner.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know why, because I don't feel like I've never tried it, because it's just my process, but I feel like I don't have the confidence to do straight inking with my brush, just straight onto the pencils with the brush. So I have the pen line already there, and then I go back with a brush to kind of punch up the outlines and do
The line weight.
the line work. But before I do that, the whole page has been inked with one of those thin line pens, and
I do
then
that.
Oh, do you? And then
Yeah.
I get a slightly, and then I have a bunch of different pens. Then I use then I get, this is an old trick that I actually got out of one of these old cartooning tips book. But once I have that, before I do the brush, I just get a Q-tip. I have Q-tips. Just dip it in the ink, and any big black areas, I don't do it all the way to the edge. Just fill that in, and then I use kind of fatter pens to kind of fill them out to the edges. And then after that, that's when I use the brush pen, and then I kind of finish it up a little. So so that's my process in terms of inking. And I should add, we were talking before we went on. I said that my original pages, when I started out, I was really old school, and everything was on the page, including the lettering. And I was a terrible letterer. I mean, I thought it was good. It was legible, but though I have to say, there was a brief time it didn't go through, but Image had contacted me about doing their book, my book with them early on, and one thing they said is, "Hey, can you get someone to re-letter though?" So I hear that. So
I mean, hand lettering is a skill. Like that is tough.
Yeah,
I did not do well at hand lettering in school.
As a matter of fact, my earliest, I had zines, and then I did 4 issues before I rebooted as Rob Haynes Adventures, and I had 4 issues, and those were hand lettered. And those 4 issues were called Adventure Strip Digest. And I don't sell those as back issues anymore, because I collected them in a volume 0 trade paperback, so you can get that. But I actually, before I put the trade paperback together, I re-lettered the whole thing. So so that way it'd be, it's going to be in a nice format. I figured, that was one of the few times I hired someone to do the lettering for me. And talk about process. The one interesting thing about that, the guy because again, those pages were old school, so those didn't exist digitally. I had to scan those, but they also had the original Zipatone. And when the guy re-lettered it, I thought he was just going to use my balloons and just put in the lettering, but he actually put in new balloons, new lettering, and then put it on top. So I had to clean up the art because the old balloons were sometimes there. But what made it challenging was I had to sometimes replace Zipatone to cover up areas that that were now exposed. So what I had to do, thank goodness for Photoshop, what I had to do is I would patch it. I would get a little piece of the art where there was Zipatone, and since Zipatone, when you lay it down, it can be at any angle. But if I took it from that same page, just moved it over, and that sounds like this was about a 144-page book, but it wasn't, it wasn't as labor intensive or nightmarish as I expected. It took time, but I was able to get it done and get it. But the good thing now it got done and everything. But what I was getting to is that my original pages were everything was on the page, Zipatone, lettering, and everything. But now, as with so many digital tools available to you, I'd say about anywhere from 70 to 80% of my pages are on the, it's ink on the page, but then the rest of it is digital. I mean, there's the lettering, there's the Zipatone, and I use a little bit of like 3D modeling, SketchUp.
Yeah.
And not a whole lot, but so as a matter of fact, for a while, I thought I got too hooked on that. So I had to back up because I was to the point saying, I'm just going to get a SketchUp gun. But that got silly. So I kind of, but it's a process. You kind of see what works. And I didn't think I think it was fine. And the trick was, I did think I integrated the work well into my work, into the art. I don't think it stood out like, it took you out of the work or was really noticeable. But, but the thing about digital is, now it's nice to be able to like, you're drawing the page. I go, should I put black here or there? I'll do it digitally because, obviously if it doesn't work, you can see right if it works or not works, just, undo or just do that. So that's one of the things that's not on the page is that I'm doing a lot more black. I still used to do a lot of the black on the page when I was digital, but like I said, over time I said, I don't really have to do that, or I don't have to commit to that right now. I could do that, do that digitally. And then, and then there's little things too. I realized, when you have like something like parallel lines at or a brick pattern or something that's in perspective, I still sometimes will draw that, but at the same time you go, well, that's the whole point of using digital, something that has to be perfectly, measured. You have to, that's what it's there for. So I've been trying to, I've been using that more, or taking advantage more of those kind of tools.
We do have another question from Roland Mann, actually, before we jump in. He wants to know, do you have someone who works with you in the role of an editor? Do you have anyone that you send alphas to, or is it all you?
Something I should, and I know people do that, but I don't. And that's as a matter of fact, I realize I do have one person. He's a big fan of my work. He gets everything, but he always gives me notes afterwards. And it's gotten to matter of fact, I see him at shows, and he'll come back the next day because he read it. He goes, "Okay, do you want to hear?" and he's actually caught plot holes. He's nice. Plot holes and some stuff. So and part of it is, but I would say it's probably a good idea to do that, and I don't. But I used to actually, I realized I actually didn't even proof well enough probably before I went to print, So I've become a little bit more stringent about that, at least in proofing myself in terms of, I told you how I PDF things, and, and then I'll go to Kinko's rather than use all my printer ink, I just put in a PDF, print it out at Kinko's because, reading it on paper is a little different than reading it on the PDF. I can catch things on the PDF, but reading it on paper the way it's supposed to be read, it's easier to catch things like that. And plus, I can just mark up what I need to do on them. But yeah, I know.
Was open all night long.
What's that?
And Kinko's was open all night long.
Oh yeah, I used to say, I told you I used to work. I used to print my books as zines, yeah, I got to know which Kinkos or which machines were the best machines around town in LA. And part of it was because this is just a funny side story. Part of it was when I was talking about Zipatone. Zipatone was at one point was kind of hard to find, and it was kind of pricey. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it or worked with it, but I found out there was this adhesive. I mean, it looked like Zipatone paper, but it was blank, called Sticky Back. And you could buy them. It was way cheaper than Zipatone. So what I used to do is I bought a box of those sticky backs, and I had one sheet of Zipatone, and I used to Xerox it onto.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Kinko's back then. I mean, now the machines are way better and they're more digital. But back then, if you had a bad machine, especially that, it has to be a consistent dot pattern.
Right.
Yeah, so finding the right machine was but I did find a place that had a good machine, and I would always, you do one test to make sure. And I still have that Zipatone, but I haven't had to use it.
That's awesome.
But it saved a lot. I mean, I think I bought a box for like, I can't remember how much it was, but maybe it was about $80, but still for 100 sheets of that. And it was the same exact material as Zipatone, except like I said, it was blank adhesive, peel off adhesive, but not as expensive as Zipatone. And like I said, Zipatone was getting harder to find anyway at the end there.
Absolutely.
So we used to do that at Kinko's for punk stickers. We used to get the sticky backs that was white, and we get the clear one. And we used to make like different the stickers for like the punk bands that I used to hang out with. And so we sell them at shows and whatnot.
That's right. I did see. I remember seeing that. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Well, we're coming up on our last 15 to 30 minutes here. So open up to our other hosts here. Anyone else have any questions for Randy before we look into our closing segment?
Most influential, other than your own comics, most influential comic for you? Character.
Oh, well, I think I mentioned. I mean, it's Milton Caniff and Terry and the Pirates.
Okay.
And when I said I discovered that in History of Books, that was before they started collecting them. For some reason, I just was enthralled by just seeing a few panels of the book, because that's all they had. I did get a book called The Syndicated Comics of the Daily News Chicago Tribune, because that's who syndicated them, and they had a lot of books. But even that book only had like 1 week sequences from different eras of the book. That's the only way I read them. And but perfect timing. Around 1976, they started coming out with some of the earliest collections of Terry and the Pirates. Are you guys familiar with that book? With that?
I'm not too familiar. No.
Oh, well, let me just show. I mean, he's
all right.
I have it right here. Let's see. Anyway, here. This is Terry and the Pirates.
Nice.
Oh, okay.
How do you know that?
Yeah. Look at this. I mean, oh wait. Look at that. That's great stuff. Look at that. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
So that was my first book, but this is a book I got. As a matter of fact, this is $6.95. I got this as a Christmas present. It came out in 1976, but then they started collecting them. And then when I was in college, that's the first time someone started collecting the whole. He's worked on it from 1934 to 1946, and then he did Steve Canyon. So. Nice. And now it's been collected several times since. IDW has a big collection. They're collecting it a second time right now. Yeah. But when I started out, they didn't have it. But Terry and the Pirates, and then I discovered a little later the Spirit, Will Eisner's Spirit. Yeah. And then from there, and then when I was also a little later after that in college, Alex Toth. I mean, he's that guy's the best. And then along with Milton Caniff, there's Roy Crane, who does Wash Tubbs and Captain Easy, and also a strip called Buzz Sawyer, which was a lot like Steve Canyon. He was I talked about World War II. It started as a World War II strip. He was a pilot, and after the war, he became a private detective. So there's kind of like connections to what I do. As a matter of fact, some of the characters and storylines in Rob Haynes' adventures kind of does tie into Terry and the Pirates, and I have I have some connections in terms of characters or company names. So I have like little Easter eggs in there. So, and like I said, the issue I'm working on right now is really going to make those connections. So I'll point that out to readers. I pointed out that even if you don't know those strips, I mean, it's, you'll enjoy my comic book, the story. But if you know those characters, then it's going to be a little bit of extra fun there. So, but so Milton Caniff, Alex Toth, those, in terms of more modern people, I mean, I'm a big Howard Chaykin fan.
Mm-hmm.
Love Howard Chaykin. But, I grew up in the 70s, 80s. So, I liked the run of Steve Englehart and Marshall Rogers on Batman, Detective Comics. I grew up, X-Men, John Byrne, and then Walt Simonson. I mean, I was collecting comics during that period. And then there's also the Hernandez brothers, when the kind of the, alternative comic scene hit, again, I was in college at the time, so I was picking that stuff up too. So, I get influenced by a lot. I mean, like I said, Terry and the Pirates is my main inspiration, but I look at a lot of stuff and I read a lot of comics. So
Good. Thank you.
So I read through. I really enjoyed reading the stories. I do.
Oh, thanks.
There's quite a bit that I picked up from there. I liked your modeling. You tended to go through. It seemed like you did a lot of research. I mean, is it the first issue where he's riding around in a Porsche Boxster, and
Oh, yeah.
it's like it's a Boxster. Not only does it say it, but it's drawn that way. The tanks, you see a lot of the influence and things, so it's not just kind of random. It seems a lot of your work and a lot of your drawings and things that you put into that were all you went into a lot of like detail and history to pull that stuff together, which was really nice. I also liked the fact where you would bring characters back, like the Strand on the Desert Island, the villain from the first, from the stealing from the monastery and all that, just a lot of tiebacks, and you see a lot of the references on there. But then, in addition to all that, I also like your commentary. I read through everything. I read through, the letters. I read through your forwards and everything that you had in there. So I also like the fact that you went through and described, what your motivation was for those particular issues, and that plus everything being, self-contained, and, one issue you're here on baseball, the next issue you're here on pirates, and you just give a really wide range of different aspects that show your interest in it, and I appreciate that. And I am fairly local to you, Southern California, outside of LA, so San Diego, if you're there again this year, I'll try and stop by and see you. I don't know if you ever go into WonderCon, but I'll be going there as well.
Yeah,
so
I'll be posting about it soon, so you'll know where to find me.
Okay, but overall, I really enjoyed the work, and that's why on Facebook I'm like, I was really looking forward to this show today, to hear about some of your influences and things like that, and some of the stories. So it's not let me down. So
thanks so much. I did appreciate. I did see your Facebook comment. I really appreciated that. So, and I appreciate what you just said. So, and I'm also glad you read the text piece. I do like writing those. I was going to joke. I said, I don't want any of my research to go to waste. So, I'm going to put it in there and show this is what I had to look up for it to do this story. But I'm glad you enjoyed those too, because I do like writing those. And sometimes it depends on how much space I have. sometimes I said, oh, I don't have any space to write in this one, so I have to kind of make choices. But what I, especially with this latest issue, I'm thinking that especially if I'm talking about like what characters are based on what characters, I'm actually thinking of putting that online rather than put it in the book in print. So,
That's
but
cool.
it'll be, I'll just make that available. But I'm glad you liked it. And I have to say also that sometimes when I was we were talking about selling at conventions before, I used to think my audience was people who like the old adventure strips, and that was, that's I'm not. I mean I wasn't really that generation, I like those books, but so I sometimes used to think, oh, that's a narrow, I said that's not a lot of interest, but I found out that obviously you don't need to know those strips to read my book. I mean, I'm just trying to do a fun story, and it's set in the modern day, so it's not a nostalgia book. But what I found out, and this goes back to what you say, reaching out to people. I have to admit, sometimes I wouldn't reach out to people that I said, oh, they're not interested in my book, But I found out that wasn't true. That I should expand my audience. I mean, a good example was at last Comic-Con. This there was this, I think she was about a 12-year-old girl. She was like looking at my comic and then talked to me a little. And again, I'm not saying she wouldn't want to read it, but I just never think of that as my audience necessarily. And then later in the show, the dad, he was actually at a table, kind of catty corner from me, and he said, hey, my daughter's really interested and she loves you. She loves your art. And I get a lot of that. People just will sometimes get stuff from the art, but he just wanted to make sure it was appropriate for her. And I said, oh yeah, I have a few stories that are, there's nothing like even PG-13, but there's some stories that are maybe a little more mature or something. But I did say, no, this issue, she'll like it. And the next day he ended up buying several more issues because she loved them. And then the very last, when we were shutting down for the show, she came by and she said she was looking for one other thing that she wanted to get. And I actually ended up earlier. I actually curated some issues for her that I thought she would like. At least like I said, that they were not the mature ones, but and she loved all those. And at the end of the show, I think I just handed her one other book, so she just have another book to read. But what I'm getting to is so nice to have a young girl like my book, and similar to that, and I do have women who like my book too. So again, it's nice to know it's not just guys who like old comic strips is my audience. It's been nice to realize that over there, because that's what I was. That was that audience. It's the old the cliche that I'm doing comics I want to read, or that I want to do. But it's nice to know that other people that are different than me and have other interests are still find the book entertaining, and that's goes back to what I was saying. It's it's an action variety series. I don't know if that necessarily comes through when people see one issue or whatever, but I think once someone reads a few issues or gets that, then I think it really opens up the series to people.
That's one.
That's cool. I have a question,
Sure.
if I may. What do you have on the board?
Which one? Oh, here. Yeah, I put that there on purpose. This is
I was just trying to look at it.
This is the cover to the next issue. Well, I don't know if it's the cover, but I did this before I started work on the issue because I just wanted to have kind of a reference for the main characters. And if you go to my social media or to my web page, you'll see this in color as well, with with the mock cover with the logo and everything. But I have to admit, I haven't fully decided if it's going to be the cover. It probably will be, but I haven't decided yet. Because it's kind of
I love it. That looks so awesome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, especially. Oh, I should add that this is my character, and again, I told you it's a flashback, so he has his old hairstyle there. Since we were talking about that, I gave him his old hairstyle. But again, when I write about it, you'll find out, especially since we were just talking about Terry and the Pirates and other strips, who these characters are. But this is also my character here, and I put him. I think I sent it to you. He was in the World War II comic book, and when I told you I was a big Sergeant Rock fan. So before I did this current character, I had a book called Sergeant Haynes and Hell Platoon.
Yep.
And that's who he is. And I did, since it's a World War II story, I said, I'm going to put him in there. So he does meet his great granduncle, who, in the modern day is no longer alive, I guess. But again, it's a flashback story. It's a lot of fun. I'm having a lot of fun with the story, and I think people will enjoy it. So
Jim Haynes, right?
That's what it is. So I have, I get these 12 by 18 Mylars, and I could put in a whole story, which is really nice. Right. So I have all the pages in here behind this. So, one other thing I should show you then is I'm working on this. It's not finished yet. The Spirit piece here.
Ooh.
Since it's Will Eisner's Spirit. Yeah. So I said, maybe I'll put this on social media to. I think tomorrow's Will Eisner's birthday, and it's been Will Eisner week. So I decided I'd do a little piece for this. So
that's cool. Yeah, I had to see. I know we've been talking and been listening, but that just kept calling my attention. I was like, you're getting closer. And I was like,
well, good. It worked that I put it back there. Yep. Same with that Rob Haynes sign. That's actually on my wall, and I used to use that. Before you could get banners easily. I used to put that on my booth at the top, and it hangs on my wall. But I said, I'll put it back there for this interview.
Cool.
Very nice.
That's what I mean. We used to have one of our guys who does stuff for Silverline, Peter Clinton. He's from England, and we have a banner, and Tim used to put Peter Clinton's banner behind him.
It's still up from a Matic convention one year, and then just kept it.
Right?
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
Okay.
I really appreciate you.
Thanks.
Okay, well, we're wrapping up here. Randy, is there anything in particular you wanted to say or mention before we start wrapping up?
No, just that. Thanks for having me on. I had a fun time. You guys, I had a really fun time. And check out my comics. I've got the 25th issue is coming out in July in time for San Diego Comic-Con. And I've got all the back issues are available. And the first 8 issues and some earlier stories are in trade paperback, like I told you, and I have deals. And my website is WCG Comics, and it's WCGcomics.com.
Absolutely. Okay. And I believe also we had someone earlier mentioned that they follow you on Twitter and put your tag up there for other people to follow as well.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this has been Let's Run Show on Tuesday. We will be back next week with a topic which got loaded onto a different calendar, so we get the calendar pulled up. In the meantime, we'll stay here. When we end the show, we'll get put back to a separate green screen, so we'll still be our green room. So when we put up our ending banner, Randy, you can leave if you wish to, or you can hang around if you would prefer to do that. Next week, we're going to be talking about making leap in the comics. So if you're just getting started, talking about the period of time when you're first making the decision to get into comics, the choices you have to make, everything like that. Okay. But yeah, we'll be back next week with that. Make sure to check out Wednesday Wham and Silver Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern on those respective days. And until next time, remember to
make mine Silverline.
Silverline.
There we go. And Randy, real quick, can we get you saying "Make Mine Silverline" as well?
Make mine Silverline.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, we'll be back at the end of this timer.
Hi, my name is Paul Kupperberg. Make mine Silverline.